All right, Matt, we are live. Well, not really live. We are recording.
We are live and recording.
There you go. That's right. So, so nice new camera there. The image quality is really nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was time to get a new one. I was running on a old, I think it was Creative webcam that I had, so I ended up getting a Logitech C920.
Yep.
So
full 1080.
Full 1080, even under Linux, as you can tell. So
yeah,
because before I didn't have the whole widescreen extra bits, so certain parts of my mic were not being shown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you can see it all now, man. That's nice.
So
very nice.
So what are you up to?
Man, I've been all over the place. I have distro hopped over the last week. I have run Manjaro Deepin. I have run Solus, both Mate as well as Budgie. I have run, I was on KDE because, of course, as you know, KDE 5.9 was coming out. So I hopped over to Antergos, and upon install, you're at 5.8.5 on that, Matt. So I was getting ready to upgrade, and then I saw Big Daddy's Rocco's video on kind of a few issues, and I had chatted with Acid Monkey and a few other people about the upgrade, and some things working, some things not. So now you recently upgraded, right?
I am currently in the process as we speak right now. I am updating my AUR stuff.
Okay.
So if my sound cuts out, it is because it is updating GStreamer bad.
Oh. Now, is this on Manjaro, I think you said earlier?
Yeah, this is on Manjaro Deepin. Not Deepin, KDE, sorry.
Okay.
So let me see if this actually is fully, because I haven't restarted yet. So see if this is actually on 5.9 or not yet. Nope, it's still on 5.8. It's probably
5.8. Yeah. Well, you know, for most folks, I think 5.9 will be fine. It's just when you get into certain things. Well, actually, take that back, because I think there were some issues where there was crashing on Discover. Now, with Manjaro, you don't have to worry about that because you've got the AUR.
Chaos, or KAOS. Yeah. Still running it on the ProBook. I haven't tried installing anything else. I'm assuming it's an update to 5.9. I don't know.
Okay.
Because I didn't actually sit there and look at all the packages. It was just like, oh, Pac-Man update. Okay, whatever. And I just kind of ran with it, whatever. Because again, they have the Manjaro mentality of vet it first, I guess.
Right.
I updated KDE, and a lot of weird stuff broke. Like you do, Alt-Tab, the window switchers. KDE came up telling me that was broken. That was after it was legit broken. Like you Alt-Tab between two windows, and it tells you Alt-Tab, or like the window switching for Alt-Tab is crashed. Report it to your distro maker or something. I was like, that's kind of a key function to break. So
well, KDE's been.
I don't know if it's some of the packages that I might have installed from the on that end, so that could have been on my fault.
Okay.
But something that functional was just like, you right click to change the, like I was changing the panel, and because I was gonna go to the full screen one, and like the panel just went, like the selection panel would not come up at all. I was like, that's a severe problem.
Well, and for those running KDE Neon, you've got the your app management is through Discovery. Is it Discovery or Discover?
Discover.
And so that was crashing on Rocco. So I haven't watched his video yet, but he talks about that. And then I heard the same report from a few other people that Discover has some issues with 5.9. And if that's your only way of obtaining the software that you want to install, that's a big issue too. But at the pace that the KDE team moves, I think they'll be all over this stuff pretty quick,
Yeah, most definitely. I hope so, because I've finally settled in on like a desktop environment.
And it is KDE.
For the most part, it is KDE. Actually the netbook, this old ancient POS, actually has secondary life because of the 32-bit version of Blank on Linux.
Nice.
And
yeah, you've had that on there for several weeks now, right?
I have, and you know what? When you come in somewhere in between where KDE sits at like 480 roughly at idle, and somewhere between that and like enlightenment spot on a old
We're hanging.
like I use it mostly for Word documents and that kind of stuff. Works out great, like especially for what netbooks are meant for. Give me a keyboard, not a touch screen.
That's exactly right. Well, so you recently had posted a video discussing on your channel, discussing. It got a little heated. Well, heated's maybe not. Just it was a discussion, right? I mean, people were getting involved in the merits of open source versus proprietary, right?
Yes and no. Personally, you know me, I am a practicality Linux user over the philosophical end of things. I kind of fall into the Linus Torvalds approach, where it's just like, give me the best tool for the job. I really don't care if it's open source or proprietary. I have a preference for free Libre open source software to please the RMS types. I do not fall into the Richard Stallman mentality, and I question whether or not that the FSF, or Free Software Foundation, is a little hypocritical.
Oh, okay. So you kind of got into that subject matter.
I did, because if they really cared about user choice, et cetera, you know, all this other stuff, which they expect to no end, why did it take them so long to update their these are the most needed projects? And, you know, like if you looked at it prior, it was stuff from like 1995.
Right.
I mean, I get they're still working on the GNU Herd kernel, but come on. I mean, let's update a few things here.
Right. Exactly. So, well, you know, I'm like you. I feel like if there's a better tool for the job that will work on Linux and it's proprietary, you know, you got to pay for it or whatever, but it does the job, and it does the job better than something that's open source, then why would you limit yourself on that?
I know, and that's kind of where I fall in with it, because it's like you, I remember going to the store, buying a boxed version of Linux. For those that don't know, it came on, like 3 or 4 discs at the time, and you had some that came on like these weird thing called 3.5-inch floppy disks. If you went way old school.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've always been, I don't care about the platform. I don't care about the tool. If I can get something done, I don't care about the tool. I don't care about the underlying OS. None of it matters to me. Do I have a preference? Yes, we all have preferences. I prefer Linux because it gives me customization, it gives me choice of how I want to design things, et cetera, et cetera. You know, all the bells and whistles that every free software person will expound about Linux, or sorry, GNU Linux. For me though, can I edit video? Can I do Word documents? Can I listen to music? Can I play some video games? And if it checks off all the boxes, for the most part, I'm going to be a happy camper.
Right. Well, and we've got to face it too. There is software that's available still in the repositories that's sorely in need of some major updating, just to bring it into the 2000s. You know, and just because it's free doesn't mean it's good. Just because it's open source doesn't mean it's good. To me, there's proprietary software out there that does a much better job than some of the open source alternatives, and then vice versa. There's, you know, some phenomenal open source software out there that is far superior than some of the proprietary offerings. And you don't discover that until you get into the GNU Linux world. And it's a real discovery process, because some of it you spend the time to try to, all right, figure out, let's pick something out of thin air here, Matt. Let's say an email client. Okay. Personally, I look at Thunderbird and I think, goodness gracious, this is 1995 all over again.
In fairness, Outlook really hasn't changed that much either.
Well, yeah. Now, I like Outlook. I think Outlook is, if you're going to look at a client to process your work, your email through, and maybe your calendar management and your contact management, I think Outlook does an outstanding job compared to Thunderbird with the plugins and piecemealing everything together. Even better than Evolution. I think Evolution is the best attempt there. My point being, so now we've got Nihilus, which any day now I'm hoping is going to release their new free Nihilus Mail. And I think that'll be a nice, not a replacement for Outlook, but if you have the desire to process your email through an installed application, I think Nihilus will be a good option, or at least I'm hoping it will be. Now, that was paid at one time, and I almost paid for it just because of the experience. Maybe that's not a good, maybe there's a better platform or whatever of applications to talk about between the two. But is there anything that you pay for right now that you're going to continue to pay for because it's a better option?
This will piss off a lot of, excuse my language, but this will piss off a lot of Linux users. If I have to do like real severe video editing, like legit video editing, as much as I love Lightworks, as much as I love Kdenlive or any of the open source projects, and I've donated to Kdenlive, I've paid a license for Lightworks. So like, I will pay money for a good piece of software. They're just not feature complete yet. So I unfortunately have to go to Windows, and the program that I use is Corel Video Studio Ultimate something, whatever.
Right.
Version 10 or 20 or whatever they're at now. Because the feature, I am not going to piecemeal features and functions and limit myself from getting a job done.
Right.
As begrudgingly as I do not want to do that. But on the same note, I am not willing to not try a different workflow. So that is not the case. It is sometimes easier to just say, screw it, I know where all this is. This is easier. This is quicker. I can get this done in this amount of time. This is how much time I have. And I don't have to, you're not trying to spend, oh, hey, look, like sometimes with like open source video codecs, they don't always, synchronize well. And if you try changing them from this, AVI to, WMV or whatever, H.264 to H.265 or any of these other codecs, and like the audio desynchronizes, or you get like the scrambled, like old, like CRT, like scrambled white snow stuff from, it's a headache. The same video. And that's kind of where I fall on it.
Well, the other thing that I like and I like to see is cross-platform software. And you're starting to see a little more of that now. So cross-platform being, it'll run on Windows, it'll run on Mac, and it'll run on Linux. I think we see more of that now than we did certainly, 8-10 years ago.
Oh, most definitely.
There was core focus back then. It was either a Windows piece of software or a Mac. And over time, Microsoft started to offer, their version of Office for the Mac and other bits of software. And that became more of a trend. And so it's definitely more prevalent now. That makes it good because there are a lot of GNU Linux users who still dual boot. And to have the pleasure of using an application that, for the most part, functions and has a general UI that's the same from platform to platform, makes it that much easier to, you're not relearning another piece of software that does a similar thing to when you're on Windows versus when you're on Linux or when you're on your Mac.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from that standpoint, cross-platform is awesome. I mean, I love it from that standpoint. Would I love to find the ultimate software within GNU Linux that's better than anything else in Windows or Mac? Absolutely. I would love that. Is that reality? It's just simply not,
And that's the part where I think I agree. Having switched people from Windows over to, various Linux distributions over the years, nature is great because you can throw all those programs to them on their Windows machine. It just kind of, they don't know the difference between Firefox or IE. If you just take the icon and label it Internet, they're not going to notice the difference 90% of the time.
Right.
Same with email or any of this other stuff. So if you can wean them off all the proprietary stuff, you can switch people to platforms. And then this is where I talk about the underlying platform to me not mattering. I mean, I use Chrome or Firefox, or currently I'm actually using Vivaldi for most of my stuff.
Okay.
Across all the OSs that I use, because it works. So why not? It's less of a headache. I import, everything gets imported that I need to import, and extensions work, and it's just like, okay, I can, just pick up, move my house a little bit, and go right back to where I need to.
And you've hit on something there. It's what you know, and you turned me on to Etcher. So I just did a video on Etcher in Cool Linux Tools segment. Awesome piece of software. And it's cross-platform. So if the person running Windows is using Etcher and they decide that they want to move over to Linux, there's Etcher. They know Etcher already. They know how Etcher works. That is one more tool in the belt, if you will, to allowing that person to feel more comfortable using their Linux operating system. Your browser. So now, well, not now, but for some time, you've had Chrome and Firefox, and these are all browsers that Windows users, I venture to say that probably, and I don't know the numbers, but I'm going to guess 65 to 70% of Windows users do not use IE, they use Chrome.
They don't use IE, and they don't use Edge.
That's right, and they definitely don't use Edge. So, there's another piece of the puzzle. And then the more, and let's say this, that there is proprietary software that you're paying for on Windows. Well, a lot of people would not mind too terribly paying for that software. I mean, let's get, within realistic terms here. I mean, we're not talking about a $300 Sony Vegas suite or something like that. No. You don't want to double pay for that. But, if it's a piece of software that's available in Linux and it's, $20 range or whatever, but it gets the job done, and that's what and that is available in Linux when you make the switch, there are cases where people are fine with that. They would gladly pay that $20 because it allows them that one more piece that lets them do what they want to do within Linux.
I agree. But that gets me into a question of, the FSF always talks about it's up to the users. They take this kind of like, Debian has a certain philosophy, and what their philosophy is. The FSF has more of like this militaristic, like hostile to everything, approach. Debian, while they have the leanings, FSF leanings,
right?
I can go into Debian testing or the firmware settings in Debian and, oh, hey, look, proprietary, click.
Right.
Because I can tell you right now, installing firmware on this with a completely open source OS isn't going to happen.
Nope.
Why? Because I have a Broadcom here that requires me to use the Broadcom firmware cutter to extract the firmware and install the firmware, and it's a giant pain in the butt. and that's if I did it the way Richard Stallman wants it. Debian, oh hey look, Broadcom driver, click, apt-get install, woohoo!
Absolutely. Well, and that was one of the things. Let's take a look at Linux Mint, for example. So Linux Mint was one that initially allowed or had available proprietary software out of the box, right?
Did they? I believe they did. I know they had the codecs and stuff installed.
Yep, some of the proprietary codecs and things like that. Not the whole world of proprietary software.
No, yeah.
But codecs and things like that. And let's see, what else? PC, was it PC OS that had?
Oh, PC Linux.
PC
Linux OS or whatever.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. There's been a number of different distributions. There's been some that install like default Google Chrome.
Right.
By default. There's others that have had Opera. You have, I think it's Deepin that installs WPS Office by default.
Yep.
Which personally I think is a better choice anyway. But maybe only Office. Those are the only two that I'm debating.
Deepin OS even includes crossover. So
you can grant us the trial version, but you can still run Windows applications if you need.
That's right.
And that's the thing. I appreciate what the FSF stands for. So to the point that they have gotten to the point of it's not about what the user wants anymore. It's about shoving what their worldview down Linux users' throats. And to me, I have a certain gesture I could give to them, but I will refrain. I don't find that way productive. I personally, I find if you tell someone that all their choices are stupid, all their choices are wrong, they're going to shut down and you're going to think you're a kook. How many Linux users will sit there and tell you when they listen to Richard Stallman, they cannot either A, agree with him, or be on the flip side of that and completely laugh their butt off because he is so either out there, doesn't make sense, or doesn't understand the current computing platform.
Right.
Because he is so focused on his own belief, which I applaud him for being focused on his beliefs, but holy crap, dude. Not everyone is going to be able to just drop everything. It's a slow transition. Everything goes in waves and curves.
And that's where I think a lot of people who dip their toe into GNU Linux start to get a bad taste in their mouth, if you will, and decide, you know what, this is not worth it, because, if you could wind up on the wrong forum with people who believe a certain way about how and why you should be running only open source everything. And by the way, if you didn't pronounce or you didn't put the GNU in front of the /Linux when you typed it, you're a moron. And before you know it, people are turned off by that. And I get the whole premise behind this was the philosophy and things like that. But if you, like you said, if you're so out there and you're so one-sided on it that there's no room for real freedom being, okay, your freedom is that you just want to run open source software. My freedom is there's a proprietary piece of software that I want to run. If you can't agree that one's okay and the other's okay, and you close the other one off, then you're going to just shun many, many people who see it a different way from even wanting to get involved in Linux.
I agree. Well, I mean, was it Greg KH that recently had this conversation about when the software conservatory or whatever the heck it was, they were going to sue one of these companies that they had been trying for like 10 years to work with. And they're like, you guys just basically threw out 10 years of goodwill that we had built up to them.
Yeah, exactly.
because of this militaristic view. And like, I'm not harping on the lawyer aspect that Linus Torvalds does, but the simple fact of the matter is, if the guys that are building the stupid thing are telling you don't do it, you might want to listen to the engineers at times.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, you know, my goal and my focus for the channel, as I started, when I got into Linux Question, I wanted to share all the really cool things about Linux and why it is possible to make a change from Windows, and how that can be done with using various pieces of software and things like that. Plus the fun side of it, the customization, the choice, you know, that we have. We've got some great choice. Well, a part of that is that if there is something that I just personally think is really good software for doing a particular thing, I want to share that, whether it's proprietary or whether that's open source, or if it's a paid app, if it's cross-platform. As long as it runs well and it's a good, well-crafted app and does a good job on Linux, I want to share that, because I think that's a good thing. And if that allows someone who's been holding off, if they see something in that and they go, wow, now I can do what I needed to do now that this software is here, I'm gonna jump into Linux. I don't see where that could be a bad thing, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Neither do I, because it's like, it's funny because I can probably live like I am the epitome of like the technologist. I like live in every piece of technology. I mean, I think I have a BlackBerry playbook kicking around here somewhere. Just to give you guys an idea of like how many different OSs I play it. Like I have a BlackBerry Z10 kicking around still. No Windows phones because, well, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But for me, it's, can I get the job done with this? You know, X, Y, or Z. And the biggest thing, like you mentioned, is if I can live in Linux 95% of the time if I really wanted to. I don't, but I could. I mean, like right now, we're using proprietary software to record this video.
Yes, we are.
I'm probably using some type of proprietary driver, potentially. I'm not sure how the Linux video for Linux drivers work. I don't know for the webcam, but the simple fact of the matter is, it's if I can live in it. The problem is quality of the work that I need to do. For some people, that is a very, very big necessity.
Yeah.
You know, certain things like PowerPoint. There are things, I'm sorry, LibreOffice Impress just doesn't do.
No, it's true. It's true. That's why I'm kind of always on a quest with anything new in the Office world. You know, you mentioned WPS. There's only Office now, which is an option. You know, and quite frankly, this is just the way I've experienced it. There are times within Linux you need to use 2 or 3 different pieces of open source software, because one does one thing really well, the other piece of software does something else very well, and sometimes you find yourself bouncing in between 2 different open source pieces of software to get one thing done. And that's kind of the way the Office software is within Linux. Is LibreOffice is extremely good at certain things, and then you'll bounce over to WPS and they do a better job in certain areas, and only Office, and so on and so forth. You know, and so let me ask you this. So let's take an Office suite, for example. Let's say software company ABC comes along and they've got a brand new Office suite that is better than, take your pick, let's say Microsoft Office, since that's kind of the standard, you know, that most people hold up to. And it's doing things above and beyond Microsoft. And it comes to Linux and it's not open source. Who's to say that people shouldn't use that because it's not? Because imagine what that would do. Or imagine this just for a minute, Matt. Imagine if all of a sudden next year Microsoft released a version of Microsoft Office for Linux. Now, you want to talk about rustling some feathers. But who are we to say, oh, how dare you use Microsoft Office on your Linux operating system?
I know, and that's the thing. Like you said, I don't want to do 2 times the work. The whole point of technology is to make my life easier, not more complicated.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the reality is some open source tools just aren't up to the job.
No, you're right. And I had a conversation. I don't want to let too much out of the bag, but I had a conversation with a developer real recently, and he made an excellent point. You talk about software app centers, repositories, and let's just take a look at Android, for example. There was the big battle between Apple, and Google as far as who's got the most apps. Well, the thing is who's got the most quality apps? Who's got the apps that work? Because let's face it, you can go into either the Google App Store or the Play Store or the Apple Store and find 5,000 fart apps, mixed in amongst a ton of other apps that are just pure junk, and you can explore with that, and at the end of the day you come down and you find the best 2 after spending a lot of time and in some cases a few bucks, to finally get the best app in the store. Well, it's the same way in Linux. There's 4 or 5 apps sometimes that'll do the same thing, and it's a matter of finding the best, the one with the, I guess you'd say, leanest code, maybe the one that runs better on the systems without bogging down the system. So the point's not quantity. I think the point should be quality.
I do. Well, just as an example, let's take webcam apps on Linux.
Yes.
We all have them. Essentially the 3 you have. You have Cheese, Camoso, and GUVC.
Right.
Those are your major 3 if you're solely looking for webcam only apps. Yes, you have OBS that can capture feed, but I'm just talking strictly one function, like typical Unix design, one function, that's it. Cheese probably has the simplest interface. Camoso has the most function, probably like design-wise, and GVC gives you all the bells and whistles and all the toggles and everything that you want, but its interface is from 1987. Why a 2-pane interface? Come on. Sorry. This is why I hate the Skype, like the Qt Skype client on Linux, because it gives you that weird, just put it in front of my face. So there are times where it's like, oh, Cheese works. Oh, Camoso works. Oh, GVC works. Oh, hey, look, I changed the resolution in GVC and it crashed. It's just like you go to take a video in Cheese and you get like 3 seconds of recorded video, then it stops and it doesn't tell you. And these are the high quality apps that we hold up. Come on.
No, you're absolutely right. And the thing is nobody talks about them. Unless you go into that specific forum, you're not hearing that negativity about app so-and-so, unless you go into that forum. Because I think a lot of us, our nature is to want to espouse the good things about Linux and the benefits of Linux, GNU/Linux. And that's good. That's okay, because those need to be highlighted. But you're exactly right. I've gone through almost identically what you talked about by changing a setting, and I don't remember which webcam software it was that did it, but I changed the setting and it crashed on me, and I had to do a hard reboot.
I'll be personally honest. I have GUVC on my KDE machine because there are certain features and functions within GUVC that I can't get.
Right.
As much as I hate the interface. New webcam. I changed the resolution in the video to 1080p. First thing it does is it just kills the process entirely. It crashed. So I love these applications, but on the same note, I am not naive enough to sit here and say these are production grade quality applications, because
right.
I've had production quality grade applications crash, yes, but this is like an every time thing. It's like every time I get a new system, every time you get a new piece of hardware, every time it's just like, holy crap.
Well, you bring up another good point, and that is the inconsistency from, let's say, distribution to distribution. So Kdenlive, for example, if you run Kdenlive within KDE, a KDE desktop environment, all of your controls and everything are laid out as they should be, with the exception of if you've gone in and heavily themed or applied themes that then go in and try to apply yeah, then you could run into some issues. But for the most part, if you run Kdenlive within KDE, the experience is very good. Everything is where it needs to be control-wise and placement-wise. I have installed Kdenlive in other distributions running XFCE or running, GNOME or GNOME. And the experience sometimes is radically different in that the controls get all out of whack. Sometimes you can't access certain things because they're covered up by ill-formed controls and things like that. And so that experience from distribution to distribution can be radically different. The stability of the app as well can be different from distribution to distribution. You know, so there's a whole mess of things that come along with it. Not to say that a proprietary piece of software or a proprietary expensive piece of software wouldn't have the same issues, but typically if they're charging you for the software, well, not always, that's too broad of a statement to make, but typically if you're paying for the software and it's proprietary license paid for software, typically it's pretty decent. I mean, that varies.
It does. Well, it's like, as an example, like I know a few times, like when I've tried doing, this is before OBS was a really big integral part to doing stuff. Trying to do screen, like, you know, webcam and, sorry, get the webcam focus back. You know, trying to like, capture webcam and desktop, and you know, sometimes the camera would get, you know, the resolution would get screwed up with it. So it does happen. I'm not saying like these paid programs are not infallible, but I think when a lot of Linux users or GNU Linux users, whatever, you accept it to get something, and because it's free or FOSS or floss or whatever terminology you want to use, that we just kind of accept it because it's like we almost take it like, oh, it's a hobby, and it's like, no, you guys want this to be like represented as like commercial grade ready. Like there's some great applications that I don't think get enough credit.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to KDE, Krita.
Oh, awesome! Yes, yes.
Love Krita for if you want like a Lightroom type application. You do a lot of photos. Darktable's a great
Darktable's great. Yep.
Those programs, I personally have never had crash on me in the middle of a workflow.
Right. Right.
Kdenlive, Lightworks, OpenShot, Cinelira, Lives, Pativi, like every single Linux video editor though. Oh, hey, look, autosave doesn't work.
Let me tell you, OpenShot, I've tried it numerous times. You know, they had a recent update and everything. OpenShot's had some real issues lately, and I'm not just coming down on OpenShot, but so the new version was released, a couple weeks back. I'm not going to get the date correct, but anyway, so I installed OpenShot with high hopes, and man, still had all kinds of issues and had to go back over to Kdenlive. So that's an example for sure. But you're right. Then there's some super high quality stuff where you go, wow, I've never seen anything better on any other platform. You know, what's the one for desktop publishing?
It's a WYSIWYG essentially.
I can't think of the name of it now. I'm drawing a blank, but you know, there's some for there's, oh gosh, I can't think of it. Is it
Inkscape?
Papyrus?
Yeah, you have Inkscape, you have
Inkscape,
Carbon. There's a few other
Anyway,
ones.
yeah, anyway, I can't think of it. But, you know, on that side of things, that's where you get in and you go, wow, this is better than anything I've ever used on any other platform. So
It is. And that's the thing. I think we're too quick to as I think there's two-pronged problem with Linux users in general. And yes, I am one, believe it or not. This is being done through KDE. So so I don't want to hear I don't know what I'm talking about crap. Because I get that plenty enough as it is. The simple fact of the matter is, I think you have like two camps for the Linux users. You have the philosophical, then you have the practical users. You and I, while we have a preference for the free and open source, and yay, it's great, and I can look at the code if I want to, if I so desire. That's all great. But on the same note, we know we have to get work done. We really, I can't let my philosophical view interfere with my work view of things. And I think Linux users tend to fall too much into like that one camp of philosophical where it's just they're not willing to have people call out the flaws and things. And the group that's usually the one calling out the flaws are like people like you and I over in the practicality end of things, where it's just like, yeah, but that doesn't work. And
yeah,
and then you get these people over here, well, then fix it. That's not how this works.
right.
It's your end users that are pointing out the problem.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's a tremendous amount of discussion to be had on that, both sides. I don't want to take away from the side that says it should be, open source only, because I understand where they're coming from there. I get that side of things. But my ultimate goal is if we have, and it's selfish, but if we have more Linux users, then that brings attention to the platform, and that hopefully pulls in higher quality developers who either already have a phenomenal product for the other two major platforms, and that gets their attention then, because now there's a market. And I know the last thing that people want to see coming to the Linux platform is a bunch of paid applications, because let's face it, we're all used to getting this stuff for free, as in beer, but to see the growth, I think proprietary software just has a place if it's better and it does a better job of it and it brings more people into the fold. Then that's how you get your growth. Let's think about Android for a minute. If Android, there's a prime example. Android is Linux. It uses the Linux kernel. Agreed?
I agree. Whether or not people like other people might agree with that is, it's an overglorified VM, is what some of them would say. But yeah,
well,
I agree.
Okay.
It runs.
You could argue that, but it's using the Linux kernel. So in this case, I'm going to use that as an example. What has made that platform on your phone so popular? Is it the great free open source aspect of the operating system?
No, that's just the developer playground for XDA.
Exactly. That's for XDA. What has made that platform so popular are the applications, right? Let's face it. Most people aren't happy with their phone as it comes out of the box. Most people install a multitude of apps, and a tremendous number of people like myself don't like the manufacturer's OS to a point where they put what's now called Lineage OS on there, or some other operating system, and build it up from there. And there's a reason people do that. But guess what happens? Even though that Lineage OS gets installed on my phone, as opposed to what Samsung put on there, the very first thing I start doing is putting all these nice high quality apps onto my phone, because they are high quality apps that do a specific thing very, very well, and they're not open source.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, as an example, like this ZTE ZMax Pro. This does not run the default stock launcher for Marshmallow, or not Marshmallow. Yeah, I think it's that Marshmallow currently. It doesn't run the stock one. I don't like the stock launcher. Problem is, I spent 1.5 years running BlackBerry 10, so I'm used to certain gestures working certain ways. I spent a long. And before anyone says I was never an Android user, I had the first Motorola Droid. Like, I spent X cash for it. Like, I remember when Android had 30,000 apps, and that was like high quality.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't like the default way Android does things. So what do? I do what I do in Linux. I go and customize things.
That's exactly right. And that's my point is I feel like there's a bunch of people out there who are like us in that they enjoy the aspect of customizing things, right?
Yep.
Of having the freedom to do that and the ability to do that. And in some ways, I see my Linux desktop very similar to what I see on my phone here, which is if this is a Note 3, okay, running a custom ROM that gives me all the features of the latest Samsung operating system, but and I don't have all my widgets in place right now, but I'm running Nova Launcher on here. So the actual launcher is on top of the OS. Now we're talking about a Note 3, an old phone that's got brand new life because you're able to do all this stuff. Point being, I'm drawn to Linux because of some of those same things, in that I can go in and make the operating system work a particular way that it just so happens I like for things to be set up a certain way. Whether that's for the OS to get completely out of your way and let you do what you do, or whether that is to add a ton of widgets or whatever you want to add. Point being, the only key thing missing there for me, while there is a plethora of software that's free that you can try, it's those super high quality apps that I think we're missing.
I do agree. I want to give, as much as I've kind of bashed on certain video editors in Linux, I do want to give props to the current Lightworks beta. I do like the revamped UI design. That is really good. Katie Live, oh my God, you are so much better now than you were, because I remember when it was like 7.3, like 8.74, like all those point releases up to where they are now, were just edit crash. Hey man, edit crash. I turned on the webcam, crash. Oh God, it was just like, and auto recovery didn't work. So it's like that's gotten a lot better. I understand why you're knocking on OpenShot. The only thing that I can say, and this really isn't a defense, is I know they are doing a bunch of changes to the underlying MTL or MLT libraries. So like all the video stuff is getting revamped along with OpenShot itself. But the cool thing with OpenShot that I like that none of the other video editors have is the integration with Blender on the back end that you don't see with like the titles and all that kind of stuff, where it's just like you don't see any of that for the 3D titles. You don't actually interact with Blender. You just have like this rudimentary UI of like changing some of the effects, and that's kind of it.
No, you're absolutely right, and I do want to give those guys credit because I know there's a tremendous amount going on there with OpenShot. That was just an example of, but eventually they're going to get it worked out. And you're right, they're doing a lot of things with just the interface of how you apply effects and transitions and things is much easier in OpenShot than it is in Kdenlive. But right now, it just so happens that Kdenlive seems to be the most stable for video editing.
Sad.
but that's where we are, and that's an example too, where at times I feel like I could almost bounce between the two and do some specific editing in OpenShot, save it, then pull it into Kdenlive so
that's
that I
what I'm talking about.
so that I can get a stable render.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to make more work for myself. I want to make less work. And oh my God, am I actually seeing spindles of CDs and DVDs behind you?
You know what? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You know what those...
You do realize those are going to be a foreign concept to anybody who that's probably born from like 1990 and onward, right?
Well, I'm saving those so that one day the value of each of those is going to be worth, $10 a piece, because there'll be no more unless you go to a landfill.
It's a cassette tape all over again.
Seriously, if I go through and I show you what's on most of those, the majority of those CDs right there, Matt, have Linux distros burnt onto them.
I can't say much because I got a spindle sitting behind my monitor. That's nothing but Linux distros.
But there was a day that's what you did. You put it on a disk.
I distinctly remember doing that because I had there was a old IBM ThinkPad. I think it was like T23. So we're talking like Pentium 3, like last gen P3, Giga RAM Max. Ubuntu 7, it was like a Ubuntu 704 based distro. I think it was like Protect Linux or something. And I ended up throwing that thing on there because Windows just wouldn't install whatsoever. I was just like, threw my hands up in the air. I was like, fine, be stubborn. So
yeah, I don't know. I need to go through those things and probably could throw throw half of them away, but nostalgia, I guess.
Because I'm gonna find a piece of hardware that is like 15 years old and just slap like this really old Linux distro on it and be like, haha, Linux still works.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. Well, man, I hope we see a day when we're not really having this conversation because the software has come so far with Linux, be it proprietary software or open source software, that it's just a matter then of discussion about, the underlying base of the OS and how fast and how well it runs on even old hardware, or light duty hardware. The other thing that's occurred too, though, is there's been a lot of dumbing down, and that's a poor choice of words, but there's been a lot of dumbing down in desktop computing.
We're looking at you, Noam.
What's that?
I'm looking at you, Noam.
And I'm not saying it's a totally bad thing, but put in its simplest form, it does allow more people who aren't exactly tech savvy and computer savvy to interact in a way that they struggled with before. So let's just face it, not everyone's a brain surgeon, and not everyone is a person who likes to sit down and explore an operating system. There are people out there who, if they come across this video and they were listening in on our conversation, would shake their heads and go, my goodness, really? That's what these people are talking about. But anyway, with that dumbing down, some of the apps also, I think, have been put into a simpler form, right? And Android's a big reason behind that, and Apple's a big reason behind that. And when you jump over to a specific piece of Linux software, open source software, it doesn't have that same simple, interface and everything at all times.
Oh God. I'm probably going to open a can of worms with this one. Ease of use is a crock of crap. Just going to say it.
You got to explain that one. You got to explain that one.
There is a difference between, if you're going by the ease of use mentality, you get Unity.
Okay, I see that.
Because according to their design UI theory and all UX theory paradigm crap that they talk about, that is the most efficient way. I believe Steve Jobs said it. Consumers don't know what the crap they want. And it really is true. Look at a movie that's been tested in front of a focus group. 9 times out of 10 they suck.
Right. Right.
9 times out of 10, any piece of software that is thrown in front of a focus group sucks. 9 times out of 10.
A prime example of that's Windows 8. You remember the famous focus groups that they put in front of Windows 8 and had all these studies about Windows 8, and it was an abysmal failure. And if we were all to stand back now and say, aside from iOS, which is a screen of icons that you touch, Windows 8 was kind of the same thing. They were just square tiles with a little bit of information on them.
Vomit on the screen.
Yeah, that exactly. But my point is more towards there are Linux applications that appear to have little thought to the UI. Okay.
Oh, I'll agree to that.
Yeah, that could be really improved. And it's almost gotten to be where it's expected, because you've got millions upon millions of Android users and millions upon millions of iOS users, and their world are these simple touch interface apps. Well, the desktop doesn't always lend itself well to touch interface based apps, but somewhere in the middle there is a cleaner, simpler UI without all of these things. And a good example is KDE versus Unity.
Yeah. If this was still KDE 4, I would probably debate you on that.
Okay.
KDE 5, if you're talking default, dark breeze, light breeze, or dark breeze, if you're just interacting with that, there are still elements here and there but that's like nitpicking.
Right.
Unity. This is someone who uses Unity. I have a widescreen laptop, which is like supposed to be the ultimate design paradigm for that UI. And it makes me want to rip my hair out at days. Granted, I'm still running 1604, but that is the LTS. And Rob, I already know your thoughts on Unity.
Oh, so. Yeah. I don't have to say anything. I am not a Unity fan. Well, I'll tell you, and I understand, from a design point, a development standpoint and all that, and we're getting a little bit off of the subject of open source versus proprietary, but GNOME, for example. So I like the GNOME desktop, but the full screen grid of icons make zero sense to me.
The only way they make sense is about the same way the Unity Dash makes sense to me.
Touchscreen?
Touchscreen.
Yeah. Touchscreen.
Oh, hey, look, I touched the right corner, whatever corner you want to go to for the activities tab. And, oh, hey, look, it brings up a giant screen of UI. And, oh, hey, look, none of these PNGs are actually scaled to the UI, so they all look like crap.
And I applied this theme, and half of the icons are working and showing up the way they should, and the other half are not. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, to my point about design being crap. Yes, there's a lot of crap that needs to be redesigned. To me, there is a difference between simplification of the UI and the dumbing down of a UI.
Correct. I agree with that.
I think we are to the point now where we are dumbing down the UI too much and calling it simplification.
I would agree to that. I would agree.
The prime example, like I recently just had to use a program because I knocked you about your DVD CDs behind you. I recently had to use Proprietary for burning a disk. You know what? That program took me 4 seconds to get to burn a disk to click. Oh, hey, look, disk 1.1. Disk copy 1.1. That's it. And that to me is great. Other programs like K3B, those are a little too much UI in your face and like, here's all the choices. And no, so there's a different. That to me is the difference between dumbing down and simplification.
Etcher is a prime example of simplification without dumbing down. Step 1, step 2, step 3. It doesn't get much simpler than that, but the control's there to do exactly what it's intended to do. It's not, they're not trying to be everything to everyone where, hey, by the way, if you click over here, you'll get a panel that gives you an equalizer. Wait a minute. Why do I need an equalizer for burning an ISO? You know what I'm saying? Trying to be too much. So I think that's a prime example. And now Etcher, is that considered, and I should remember this, is that open source?
Honestly, I don't know. I just know I use it.
I know.
And honestly, I really don't care.
No, exactly. At this point, I don't either. Now I've got to go back and look and see if that's open source or not. But you're right. It really doesn't matter because it does such a phenomenal job and it's cross-platform. And so far, the success rate on that has been fantastic. It hasn't failed me one time, knock on wood. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really haven't had any issues with Etcher itself. I've had issues with, and yes, Etcher's up on GitHub.
Let me ask you this, is UNetbootin open source?
At this point, I don't know if I really care.
Well, see, now that would be a prime example because UNetbootin fails for me 50% of the time at least. When I tried it back in the day, that was one of the first things that I kind of found was, hey, install UNetbootin and this will do the trick. And man, I would have at least a 50% fail rate, in burning the ISO. But so let's pretend for a minute that it is open source. There's a prime example, and Etcher's not, for example, and it could be the other way around. Who knows? We just don't know.
UNetbootin is GPL according to Wikipedia.
Okay. So okay. All right. So, I think that's just a small example of what we've been talking about here. So,
yeah.
Well,
I was gonna say. That's the biggest thing for bad. If you want to talk bad user experience, we're talking bad UI. Really?
Yes, we are. Yeah. Bad UI and 50% success rate. So
that is not a successful piece of hardware or software to use or
correct.
Validate your. Oh, but it's open source. If it fails me 50% of the time, then I don't care if it's open source.
Bingo. So I think you and I will I think we share the same thought on it. And I think we would agree, pretty much wholeheartedly that if it works for you and it does a better job for you, then really use it. Don't get caught up. My advice would be don't get caught up on the, oh, well, it's open source or nothing. Why would you limit yourself that way? That would be my, I guess, advice to someone who's dipping their toe into Linux.
I would agree. And before, just to poke the free software bear some more, if you're watching this video on YouTube, yes, you're using HTML5, but guess what? The video codec is proprietary.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We're using Flash.
Rocco and I debated for Destination Linux podcast if we should offer, the OGG format as well, as opposed to MP3. And that's an extra step for us in coding and everything like that. But at the end of the day, we said, well, we're getting good quality out of MP3, and guess what? Everything will pretty well play in MP3 today. So we decided not to. Now we may change our minds at some point, but
yeah,
it works for everyone. So anyway, having
run podcasts, you're going to get that one guy in the comment section is like, where's the OGG?
I know. Well, we already have. We've already had a few comments about that, and I get it. And we may offer it one day, but, and I'm not out to hurt anyone's feelings or anything like that. But at this point, we're doing it for fun. We have a good time doing it. We've got people who listen to it who don't care whether it's MP3 or OGG. And for the ones that do, then that's just apparently not going to be our target audience, So
hate to break it to you, Linux users. You're talking to the practicality end of the Linux world.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up at that, Matt. Man, yep. I appreciate the conversation, and this is the kind of thing that you're going to step on toes because you've got people on both sides of the fence. That's just the way it is. And so any hate mail I get, if it's okay with you, buddy, I'm just going to forward it over to you.
I was the one that suggested this topic, so y'all want to bring your hate mail to me, go ahead. I mean, I've been actually really nice on this particular portion because anybody who watches any of my videos know exactly how I feel about certain things. And let's just say, not safe for work.
There you go. There you go. Well, I appreciate it, man. We'll catch you later, maybe for some other toe stepping topic.
Or review. Or toe stepping.
Review.
Or toe stepping.
That's right. That's right. All right, man. I'll catch you later.
All right, sounds good.